Welcome to What's My Thesis. I'm Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Skip Snow. Hi, Skip. So you were kind of an institution around here, aren't you? Or is that my imagination? Completely fabricated.
I've known a lot of people, but I've never been a lot of people.
Well put. So, are you from out here? You grew up
No,
out here?
I'm from New York. I sort of came of age as an artist in the East Village days.
Okay.
It was my one moment of demi-fame.
Okay.
Is the 80s. And then I got out to here in LA in 99 and joined sort of the LA art community in like 2004, 2005. Have been sort of on that ride ever since.
So then, when did you come out here? Did you say
I came out here in 99, or actually the very beginning of 2000. I came out on behest of a company that I was working for. And I was doing technology for a living at the time. And
technology in what sense?
I do, right now I do what's called healthcare technology architecture. I sort of help huge healthcare companies do their technology.
Okay.
Yeah. It's sort of like being a regular architect, except that it's huge in scale. So it's like being an architect for skyscrapers, except you do it for companies and their computer systems instead of building real buildings.
Is it mostly networks, or are you doing electrical
No,
as well?
it's the business stuff.
Okay.
It's to create business applications and the interfaces between the business applications and to arrange sort of 10-year roadmaps for companies and all this kind of stuff. It's very boring. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure artists are like chomping at the bit to hear more.
Well, no, I mean,
is there a creative part of it?
For me, I realized, I guess about 5 years ago, that my entire life I've been paid to make things up. Like that is what I do. I make things up. And then in my professional life, I do it in a very utilitarian way.
Okay.
It's always sort of money, price, how much can I deliver, when can I deliver it, and is it good enough, right? And also, it's at huge scale, like world-changing scale, you know. And then my art life is sort of the striving for a personal excellence that you can sort of like. You don't have to release anything. It's all like, especially me who doesn't have a career in art per se. You can work on something until you feel it's really completed, or you can erase it when it doesn't work out. So it's a very different thing.
So you're not. So when you say perfection, you're not speaking of like a moral perfection. It's not like a spiritual thing. It's more of like a art practice thing. Like I forget you phrased it in a way
I wanted to talk about three things today.
Okay.
So and we'll weave it all together. I hope.
Yeah, for sure.
But perfection is a perfect like way to start to weave it together. So I wanted to speak about the art community. Okay. The art industry. And art in general. Okay. And I think the difference between commercial art and, you know, fine art is exactly that. It's like fine art can aspire to a voiced perfection. So what I mean by perfection, whether it's spiritual or not spiritual, whether it's whatever.
It's broad, the way you're talking about it.
Every human, no, I don't think so. I think it's quite specific.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Every human being has a voice. Not many human beings realize their voice. Okay. Every voice is or is not of its moment. If a human being has a well-voiced voice of the moment, then the world will sort of acknowledge it, see it, reward it, right? Okay. And that is a sort of perfection, right? Okay. Because you have the perfection of the individual voice, and then you have the perfection of the community receiving it, right? And that, to me, is what art is. Like that union between a well-voiced voice and the community's reception and understanding of what is being voiced.
Do you feel like anybody right now is achieving that in the art world, or is this more of a philosophical approach to thinking about it?
Rafa Esperanza, I think, achieves it. Lynn Fox, I think, achieves it. There's plenty of artists who I've known, you know, in my past who have and do achieved it. I worked for.
Do you know Rafa, or you mean other people?
I know Rafa.
Okay.
I mean, I like Rafa. He's a great guy.
Oh,
But
I'd
in
love to have
addition
Rafa on the show.
But in addition to being a great guy, you have to acknowledge how important his work is.
Mm.
I mean, I do anyway, because he's combining this whole gestalt of like the earthworks that he sort of started with the painting that he's doing now, with this notion of portraiture of his people, and yet at the same time very much relating to the commodification within the art world of things that people want to collect, which was a response to the way the Whitney Museum treated his major work as trash and literally threw out his major work because they
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's sort of a horrible story.
Wait, what happened? Can you detail that? Is it fleshed
I
out?
don't know the story
okay.
too well.
No,
I
then
mean,
don't
but I
worry
do
about
know that it wasn't worthwhile for the Whitney Museum to ship his work back or to store it, and the contract between him and the museum allowed them to destroy it, which they did.
Wow.
So I think his response to that vast destruction was to make more precious objects, but they're gorgeous. They're beautiful, you know? But anyway, what I mean is, yeah, there's plenty of artists who are making really well-voiced, well-received work today, you know? And then there's plenty of artists who don't. And again, sort of circling back to these three themes of art, like if it's well-voiced, it's good art. If it's badly voiced, it's bad art. It's fairly simple. Although it's hard to tell if something is well-voiced or not. Like
I don't want to disrupt your train of thought, but it would be interesting to have a breakdown of what you think is like heavy-handed or underhanded. Like what different things disqualify something from being a well-expressed voice. But I just want to put that idea.
No, but let me answer.
Okay.
Nothing disqualifies anything.
Okay.
It's either true or it's not true.
All right.
Right. And but what
It's it's a binary.
But well, yeah, it sort of is.
It's either on or it's off, and it can be off. But go ahead.
Lucky people can do it, and unlucky people who struggle all their lives to do it and fail to do it don't do it.
Yeah.
Right. But then, even if it's well voiced, it doesn't mean it's of its time, of its moment. So it has to be this sort of perfect combination of a well voiced voice of its moment.
Okay.
Right. And that's magic. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. You walk into a gallery, museum, studio, and you see it and you go, "Oh my God, what the fuck?" Right?
Yeah.
Excuse my language. Is that okay?
Yeah. That's fine.
And then you're amazed. You're surprised. Especially like it's really amazing in the theater setting, you know, because you're always, at least me, you always go to the theater waiting to be bored, right? Waiting to be disappointed, right? And then when magic happens, you're just like amazed, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty harsh. I find, in fairness to theater, is that I mean, it's a great. I don't want to deconstruct your joke, but I get your point.
Whereas in a gallery or a museum, if you walk in, you don't have to stay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not so unbearable if it's not moving you. Right. But again, there's this notion of, and something
It's still pretty unbearable if you go to a show.
No, I just don't care.
Yeah, well, I mean,
first of all, excuse me for being a snob, but 98% of what I see in art galleries and museums is really hideously boring.
Yeah.
And what's really horrible to me is for the last 5 or 6 years, masterpieces bore me.
Yeah.
Like I'll go to a museum and see a Rembrandt and I'll be bored. It's like horrible.
What do you think? Do you attribute that to anything?
It's a malaise, and also it's capitalism. You know, it's like we live in this moment of such sheer horror that beauty is almost like abrasive.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and I feel like for a lot of the work, as time progresses, the context changes, right? Like those pieces exist within a context of the world around them. Right. And as you enter different stages, their value to society kind of becomes diluted. You know does that make any sense at all?
I think there's something interesting about mimics in general.
What's that word mean?
Imitation.
Okay.
And I think to a certain extent, art is imitation. Right. But there's something. So I was at the Getty, the Getty in Malibu, not the Getty Museum.
Okay.
Which is where all the sort of Greek and Roman stuff is. And I was looking at these statues that are thousands of years old. And yeah, some of them were moving, you know, I mean, you have to understand that you don't understand those things the way they were intended to be understood
yeah.
or what they were intended to convey, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because they imitate experience or humanity or whatever in a sense that you or I can recognize, whether it's an abstraction or not, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because the same thing could be said for like some, Hopi cloth that's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old that moves you, right? I guess I don't agree that art only exists temporally in its moment. Like it's always reinterpreted in new ages.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think if it's truly voiced and it's not satirical, like if it's not like politically sort of relevant, then it's going to resonate through generations and through cultures.
Yeah, but I would still say that, like, as you learn more about the world, the things that people spoke about at a certain time change themselves, right? Like, for example, I was thinking specifically of what we were talking with Rembrandt, and I'm not that attached to the point that I want to argue it, but just the idea of like how far we've come, we were also kind of coming off of the horrors, right? Like what does it matter?
Well, there is that.
That's more in the context what I was talking about, rather than like it goes out of fashion, like I'm not so much interested in like people losing interest in purchasing Rembrandts or something like that. I'm speaking more specifically in the context of like the meaningfulness of a self-portrait of a painter that lived however long ago he lived. Like right now, it's not necessarily going to be the most moving thing when you go see it, right? Which would explain why you went to a master's, you like a master left you with malaise. It's still amazing, but you're maybe not, in your personal experience context, you're processing things that make it less resonant.
Yes. I mean, but because...
I'm just saying that
I think this is a really interesting point. May I?
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
So no, I mean, may I keep going on this point?
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm okay.
So it's because it's not because of the greatness or the lack of greatness of a Rembrandt.
No. Yeah.
That gives me malaise. It's the institutional adoration of Rembrandt that gives me malaise.
Oh, okay. So
right?
It's in a sense, it's almost like overexposure.
In the 70s, I went to a show of Cézanne's. I was tripping.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this couple in their late 20s. They seemed so old to me. I was like a teenager. And I love Cézanne. He was like my hero.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a painting of a man sitting at a table. I think it was card players or something. So there was more than one man. But one of the men had sort of a stump of a hand. Mm-hmm. It wasn't finished.
Yeah.
And it was clear, like the painting wasn't finished. Like you had to be a moron not to figure out what was going on. Yeah. And this idiotic couple that were on a date trying to like impress each other were trying to construct a meaning of why the hand was a stump, right?
Yeah.
And I got so angry at them, like literally angry. And granted I was tripping, whatever. So I looked at them and I said, there's 112 paintings in the show. That's how often I went to that show. I knew exactly how many paintings were in the show. I said, there's 112 paintings in the show. This one's mine. Go away.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't stand them, right? That was unbelievably obnoxious. I wish I'd have never done it.
Yeah.
But the greatness of it and my innocence allowed me to forgive the museum.
Yeah.
Right? For all of its atrocity. I can't really do that anymore.
I'm 100% with you.
On the other hand, there's a Rembrandt in the Frick, a self-portrait, to your point, of Rembrandt. And it's so relevant to me. Mm-hmm. Not because of the lighting or the this or the that, but because you can literally see where the day's work begins and ends by looking carefully at the painting. Mm. And you can see the process of Rembrandt's work, not only his hand, but his work. And it taught me, when I was really studying that painting as a man in my 20s, how to paint and how to think about certain things beyond paint, right?
Yeah.
That almost had nothing to do with the 17th century or with Rembrandt or with how great he is, and had much more to do with the magic that certain artists can convey just with like these crude tools that have been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That's what I love about painting. It's that there's been, and it's a huge difference between my professional life and my art life, which is that I all day long in my professional life I wrestle with technology that doesn't work and try to make it work, right?
Okay.
And in painting I use these tools that have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and more or less in the same way as they have been used for the last 400 or 500 years. And I don't have to wrestle with the media.
Yeah.
Like the media is really mature.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me great solace because I know I'm not going to invent anything. I'm not going to create a new way of applying a mark to a physical structure. Like I'm only able to tell the stories that I can tell and construct the abstractions that I can construct, and I communicate what I can communicate. But the tools and the media are solid. Like they'll support whatever I need to do with them, and that's nice.
Yeah, and I mean, in particular, in relation to that world, it also doesn't have the same level of planned obsolescence where it's, it's not going to be, it's already outdated. So to speak. I'm not saying painting is outdated, please.
Well, but that brings me to the third idea that I haven't talked about yet.
So so the two are, the first one is art, the second one is the institution. So we just kind of covered.
No. So there's art, the art community, and the art industry.
And the art industry, okay.
And that sort of brings me to what you just said about how it's planned obsolescence in the art industry and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're right that the art industry doesn't plan obsolescence.
Oh no, that's fair. I mean, as a market, I was speaking more in terms of the technology of painting. You because that resonated with me what you were saying, and we can definitely get back to what you're saying because that's a fantastic point. But I stopped shooting pictures as a photographer because like the technology got too complicated, and I didn't, and the cameras were always getting outdated, especially early on. Like I was shooting film, and it's not that I didn't like digital. I also just didn't like the process as much. Being in a dark room versus like sitting at a computer is not the same level of process. But go ahead. Speak to the planned obsolescence in the art industry.
But well, before that, so are you saying that
I just didn't want to have to get a new computer, borrow Photoshop, wink, wink, and all of that process to, not that it would be easy to have a dark room either, but in terms of the technology, digital wasn't really speaking to me. Or now it's fine, but as the transition was happening, I was just not feeling it.
I used to work for Annie Leibovitz, in addition to a whole bunch of other artists, but she was making the transition to digital during the moment that I was working for her, which was early, very early.
Yeah.
And she hated them. I mean, she had a Hasselblad, it was film, and people would give her these digital cameras to try out, and she would try them out, and she would literally throw them, like she would literally hurl them across the studio.
I mean, this is before 4K and stuff like that. So the cameras now are much more impressive. So I don't want to be stubborn in the analog versus digital. Although I think there's still some validity to like how much information you can put on film because of the way that you put it if you're doing pixels.
I think it's the opposite, by the way. I think it's not that there's more information or less information. It's this more random information on film.
What do you mean by random?
I think one of the really most interesting things about animation is how hard the studios that have money work to make things look naturally by randomizing them. So, for example, if you're trying to get a breeze to go through a cartoon character's hair, right? You have algorithms that randomly move the hairs.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're trying to imitate this sort of analog reality. And so when you think about a film emulsion, right, this chemical sort of thing, right, that you paint across a piece of paper, no matter how fine your equipment is, you're not going to make it perfect.
Oh, okay.
And the things, the chemical things that are going to react to the light, right, they're random. There's a randomness to them. And the same with the way, and I'm not at all an audiophile, but the same way that people love vinyl because of its randomness, you know. I think the randomness of analog is what is really attractive, not how much information.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I think, but I also think that just like my experience is still pretty much that resolution wise, like analog, it's not just I get what you're saying. It's that je ne sais quoi,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
material, which I'm totally with you. I'm like, but I
But
say that
hasn't digital caught up in terms of the
I
amount of
don't,
information? I thought it had.
maybe it had, maybe it has, but early on there was not,
Oh, no, it was
you know,
horrible.
and
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like you would take a picture and it
It'd be
looked
fuzzy.
yeah.
And you couldn't
So,
blow it up.
yeah.
But I think between the sort of AI enhancements that take place and
Yeah.
the and the actual just fidelity of the equipment, that it's not any longer a question of whether a film camera has more or less information.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of whether there's some je ne sais quoi, as you say, in film that actually does allow for a sort of magic that isn't possible with digital.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it's not anything I work on.
No, I don't know either. And I think that now, like, I think there's always been an element where the camera affects the kind of photographs you take. Obviously, the lens as well,
Yeah.
you know, but like but I don't think it's ever been as relevant as the quality of your camera. Before, it used to just basically be a box that had a hole in it, you know? So you can do a lot of like algorithmic trickery, like the iPhone, for example, that we're shooting with. If you take pictures on that, it does all this like crazy stuff to make it look better than than the camera probably actually takes. So there's a lot of that now too, which, you know, it's just interesting how much that industry.
Which means it's making lots of assumptions, right?
Yeah,
Because it's following an algorithm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas-
it's not as creatively pure as film. So like
you get the computer programs interference with whatever you're doing, which is augmenting it in a good way or bad way, right?
And by the way, right now, like people are in the comments freaking out because I literally am talking about this after having said that I did not know and that I stopped paying attention to this. So most of my assumptions could be entirely wrong. The only reason I know about iPhone camera is because for the show, I researched it.
I just know there's 3 lenses. They got to be putting it together somehow, right?
Yeah.
But back to capitalism for a second. Right?
Yeah, and the planned obsolescence.
Because I want to sort of distinguish the 3 things, right?
Yeah.
Art is this thing that people make, and if they're lucky, it becomes valuable. I mean, to other people.
Yeah.
And the community is this group of human beings who make or love art, and they're very supportive and nurturing to most artists. It doesn't even matter, for the most part, if an artist is a good artist or a bad artist. The community is going to love them if they show up.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's the art market, which has changed so much since the 80s when I entered the art world. And frankly, I don't know if it's really constructive to the manufacture of actual art, like at this moment, because and of course this is very troglodyte of me or whatever, but this when you look at the contemporary art world and when I talk about the contemporary art industry, right, I'm not talking about galleries like Last Projects or little itty bitty galleries that sell under $1 million of stuff a year, right? Even let's say less than $5 million worth of stuff a year, right?
I'm
talking about the mega galleries,
Swerners and
that are
Worths,
franchised all over the world, that produce multi-millionaire artists, right?
Yeah.
And how are they set up, and what would it take for them to take on an artist, and what kind of artists are going to gravitate towards that industry, right? It's certainly not the kind of artist that I am. Like they would have nothing to do with me.
Okay.
And why is that? Well, number one, I'm not dead, but even if I was dead, I don't think they'd like me very much. But also, I have no ambition whatsoever to have a studio with 50 people making my work.
Yeah.
It's just not who I am. It's not how I work. And therefore, I don't fit into their model, right? If you're a Hauser Wirth, and you've got, I don't follow them, but if you've got X number of galleries in all the major cities of the world, and you're selling from estates and from living artists, you need to be able to send product to your distribution points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be able to sell product through your distribution points. Even though you might be selling mostly through slides and art shows, you still need those distribution points, and you need the exhibits and so on and so forth, so that you get the museums to come in and so on and so forth, right? And that model forces artists to work at a pace, rate, and ferocity that I don't know. At least it's not very productive to my way of being a painter, right? It's more like I think of the contemporary art star as more like a producer than a painter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't know, if I
They
think,
basically just need to meet demand. I wonder. I don't know, because I've seen. Sorry, I didn't mean to break your flow. You were on an interesting roll.
no. I mean,
but
you understood what I meant. So.
It just it makes me think of whatchamacallit. Like, I wonder, because Mark Bradford, I've seen, there was that, I think it was like a 60-minute thing that he did, or he did like some
I actually admire
documentary.
him tremendously. Yeah,
I admire him tremendously, but I wonder, like, I remember there's a specific clip of him saying that if Mark Bradford, or talking about himself in the third person, saying that he only uses paint from Home Depot, or he only uses supplies from Home Depot, right? Like, if a Mark Bradford painting is going to have that, it's only going to have that. And I'm trying to think, because when I heard that, it resonated to me of like, I like to paint with these things. That's how I thought of it. But now I'm thinking, like, I wonder if that's just not disparagingly, although a lot of artists hate this word, but it's like an artist branding thing, where it's like those are the parameters by which a Mark Bradford painting has to be made to fit in the producer's vision. I wonder, I don't know if but I mean, I would imagine, because the demand thing is definitely real.
Well, first of all, certainly signature is very important to the art star.
Yeah.
And recognizing the brand is very important to an art star.
Yeah.
And
again, I also very much respect Mark Bradford, so I'm not at all.
Right.
This is not a criticism.
And he's also just done so much good for LA.
Yeah.
And especially for, like, the African American community of artists in LA.
Yeah.
You just have to love him for that, right?
No,
and his work is just astounding.
I'm just more wondering in terms of, because of the level he's at.
No, but,
and
but
if
to
it
your
fits,
point,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
If you have a studio and you're manufacturing this work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that you have very profound ideas, and you sort of figure it out, and then you go, okay, guys, here's my idea. Here's this and this and this and this, and now you guys go out and execute. And I'm going to do whatever I do to make it perfect, right?
And I mean, there's probably a lot of like FaceTime that needs to be handled by the artists themselves, right? So
exactly.
self PR and all of that, which is also time consuming.
Oh, sure.
And if you're making millions of dollars, why not hire out some of the labor, right?
Well, because then you don't discover what one discovers with one's hand.
No, 100%. Right? I'm just saying. I mean,
that's the other side of it, right?
No. I'm not for either side, but it just makes sense structurally how the demand creates that.
I have a friend
structure.
who used to be a very famous artist, right? And in his early 60s, he retired. And I said to him, like, why? What? Huh? Like, you're making like so much money. Like, why would you do that? And he said, well, Skip, I miss painting.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally said that. And it's not like he stopped working. He's working like crazy. He's just not working for the next show.
Yeah.
And God knows what he's going to produce, because he never shows anybody. And I'm not that good friends with him that he's inviting me to a studio.
Yeah.
Which is in Switzerland, I think.
Yeah.
But like, he said, I don't want to be part of this, right?
Yeah.
And he's a guy who grew up in like lower class New Jersey, right? And he had to hobnob with all these gazillionaires and so on and so forth. And he just didn't enjoy it, right? Mm-hmm. And he got enough money that he has enough money for the rest of his life. He says, like, what the heck? I don't need to do that anymore. I can go back to just simple painting.
Yeah.
And Duchamp was a little like that, right?
Yeah.
Like because he only worked completely secretly for the last part of his life. I don't know. The whole thing is weird. I mean, to me.
How long do you think it's been like this? Like
I think the transition happened with what was the first gallery that sort of started like franchising itself out? It was
I'm not sure.
Gagosian, I think, was
Okay.
the one that first succeeded at that model of like many branches all over the world
Mm-hmm.
of megastars, right?
Omega stars.
And then a lot of old school galleries saw that model and sort of imitated it, right? And then it became the model for high art, for high contemporary art. And it is the model for high contemporary art. Even Gladstone has like multiple galleries, right?
When did Gagosian start? Do you know? Like, is
Well, there's lots of rumors about Gagosian. He was around in the 80s.
Okay.
He was buying a lot of art furiously.
We don't have to deal in Gagosian rumors, but they do sound fun.
I'm not even going there. I'm sorry. But
I had to ask.
But, you know, he was sort of came out of that whole Shafrazi crowd thing.
What's Shafrazi?
Shafrazi was Basquiat's second dealer.
Okay.
So Anina Nazai was introduced to Basquiat by Andy Warhol and immediately picked him up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sort of became a star, and then he went on, right? And Gagosian's first big star was him, but I don't remember all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably had been dead by then, but
Yeah.
I don't know. But there are people like him who managed to like play both worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you know, I probably only met one amazing genius of an artist in my entire life, and it was him.
Really?
And he was just a different kind of human being than anyone I've ever met. I mean, it was like he was sort of like the radiant child or whatever. He was like, and I was so jealous of him. I fucking hated him, man. No, I got drunk. I got fired. I was working for him. It was like, it was horrible. I hated how good he was and how amazing he was and how talented he was and how I, you know, was like living on East 11th Street and he had wads of $100 bills and women chasing him and stuff. It was like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
But he really, the thing about him that really amazed me is how he refused to be like anything that had ever come before him.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at the Palladium one night working with him on two big paintings he was making. And he did this thing where he took a mop
Mm-hmm.
and he dipped it into a bucket of black paint. And he just did this in the corner of this huge painting, which I think the Basquiat family still owns.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And I looked at it and I swear to God, it was a perfect, and I don't mean like almost perfect, like Franz Klein could have painted it.
Wow.
It gets better. So I'm like doing whatever he's having me do, glue stuff to canvases, paint whatever he's having me do. And I looked at it and I said, like Jean, like that's like a perfect Franz Klein. You're amazing. How did you do that? And he stepped back and he looked at it and he said, "Oh, fuck, it is." And he was walking around. I could see that I'd really bugged him out, right?
Yeah.
He's walking around. He's doing whatever, right? And like about 10 minutes later, he takes this bucket of red paint, like a gallon of red paint, right? And he just throws it at the Franz Klein on his canvas that he had
Not
made,
an actual
right?
Franz.
And he then takes this mop back and he turns it into this other thing that looks more like a Basquiat.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was like, oh, fuck, I fucked up the best Franz Klein I've ever seen in my life, right? But that kind of like adamant refusal to be anybody but himself, even if he imitates the best master perfectly, I mean, it was amazing.
How many people did he have working for him when you were there?
He would only have one person like me who would paint with him, as far as I know. I did it. Rick Prohl did it. Other people did it.
Okay.
I didn't last. I was
you
too
told me.
I was too jealous, right? But it was amazing because every time I would work with him, he would impress me. Like one time.
That gets a little tiresome, I'm sure.
No, I was just a jerk. I was just a 25-year-old jerk.
Yeah.
But one time I'm in the studio with him and he's got this beautiful woman and he's going to go upstairs and do drugs and fuck her or whatever. And he tells me, okay, Skip, take these two colors. It was sort of a cadmium yellow deep and a cadmium yellow orange, and mix them together and paint this surface. It was a truck that he'd drawn with, you know, magic marker or paint stick, actually. And he said, just fill in the lines, whatever. So I said, okay. He went upstairs and did my thing. I finished up and I was on to the next thing that I was working on. He came downstairs. The woman left. And he looked at what I was doing. He said, Skip, what did you do? I said, I did it like what you told me. I took the two colors, I put them together, I put it on the surface. What's wrong with what I did? He said, Skip, you didn't mix the colors. There's a lot of colors there. I only wanted one color. I said, well, Jean, I wanted it to look like you had painted it. He said, Skip, if I'd have wanted it to look like I had painted it, I would have fucking painted it. On the other hand, I work for these two artists, and I'll say their names because I don't like either one of them, right?
Oh, we don't have to start drama for you.
I will.
Okay.
They're not, whatever. But their names were McDermott and McGuff. They're this sort of
They sound like a law firm.
Gilbert, they are. But they were this Gilbert and George send-off, right? The American version. And they lived this sort of fake Victorian life. They were really, Julian Schnabel was a huge fan of theirs, right?
Okay.
And anyway, they had me into their studio painting. Their dealer hired me because they couldn't finish their show, which is usually the way I got work. And anyway, I was asked to sort of invent their work. I mean, and so anyway, I was painting this landscape of theirs, grass, which I was writing my girlfriend's name all over, which is sort of ironic because they're this famous gay couple artist, right? And I'm writing my girlfriend Barb's name all over the painting, right? Because
you're writing Barb's or Barbara?
Barbara, I don't remember.
I just want to make sure.
I don't
what
remember.
The text looks
you could
like.
go look at the painting. I have no idea. But anyway, they said, "Oh, Skip, you have to pretend you're not painting. Like, go into the corner and do something because Julian's coming." Right? And I thought, you jerks. And I had done this other thing where they'd given me this Sargent nightscape to paint, right? And I looked at this thing, and it was masterful. Like, it was amazing. I mean, I looked at it and said, oh, fuck, I can't do this. This is too good I'm not this good.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to make the light as absolutely schizophrenic and stupid as possible. Because if I do that, it'll at least be interesting.
Yeah.
So Julian comes in, right? And he's looking at this painting where I did the worst possible rendition of light in the world, which is the exact opposite of Sargent, which this was a reference to, right? Mm. And they show him the reference, they show him the painting, and they say, look, isn't this beautiful? And he said, oh my God, the light is so special. And I'm going like, oh, you moron, right? Because I literally, deliberately, fucking up the light, right?
Yeah. So, that's hilarious.
Anyway, I mean, I have a million stories like that, but back to capitalism, that was the problem. You have these sort of buffoons like Julian.
You think Julian Schnabel is a buffoon?
Oh, absolutely.
I just want to make sure. It sounded like it. I just want to.
No, he's not only a buffoon. He's not a nice man.
Yeah. Okay. But, I don't want to start personal beefs with anybody.
Oh, Julian doesn't care about me. like really?
I'm just saying,
it's like one time I was in Blum-Poe, is that the name of that
Blum
guy?
Poe, yeah.
And there's this couple, and he's trying to sell a piece by an assistant of Murakami. He had a show upstairs of an assistant of Murakami. He's trying to sell this piece, right?
Pull it closer.
And so the couple are saying, oh, well, we have to get to the East Side. We hear there's a lot of cool stuff happening on the East Side. And I don't know if it's Blum or Poe, but one of them, right? It's the one who's all puffed up on steroids. And so he says to them, oh, you don't want to go there. It's dirty there. It's dangerous there. And I was mad. I live on the East Side. My life is on the East Side. So I looked at all three of them and I said, yeah, but that's where the art is.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. He challenged me to a fist fight.
Really?
Literally challenged me to a fist fight.
Wow.
This puffed up, steroided guy, right? And I said to him, for God's sakes, I'm nobody. You're a multimillionaire. Like, why are you doing this? And I walked out.
So who else can we make me unwelcome to visit?
Oh, no, but no. Look, they're good dealers. They're good programmers. I like what they show. That doesn't mean I have to like them, right?
Okay, all right. I like you guys. I haven't met you guys.
Yeah, I don't know.
I love millionaires.
And they don't know me.
This show's official stance is we love millionaires.
Okay, God bless you. By the way, is a millionaire someone who has $1 million or makes $1 million a year?
I don't know. I think millionaire is like, I mean, I'm a thousandaire, so I don't necessarily make 1,000 every year. I'm kidding. No, I never thought it. That's an interesting question.
I think it changed. I think when I was a kid, a millionaire was someone who had a million.
I thought, yeah.
And now you're not a millionaire unless you make $1 million a year, because $1 million's not that much money anymore,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I mean, yeah. I don't know.
or it's meaningless, right? Like, because
I think after your first million, like, I'm sure it can buy. I wonder at what point does it level out for you, where you're like your life doesn't change that much the more
probably
money.
3 billion.
3 billion, you think?
Because that's when you can buy any yacht you want, any painting you want, anything, right?
Yeah, but
And
you
it's not
can't buy
gonna dent you.
Twitter. That's 40 billion.
Let's not talk about those guys. And let's not talk about people whose penises are so small that they got to build rocket ships, right?
Yeah,
Like that's a whole, I mean, that's the problem with capitalism is we allow people to have so much money that they can build rocket ships.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about the patronage in the art world then? I guess that's kind of related. How does that complicate the whole situation, right? In terms
Well,
of
let's
like,
talk about the Sacklers.
okay,
Okay.
those are the Oxycontin.
The Oxycontin people who had their names taken off some wing of the Met or something like that, right?
Can I just say, this is the first episode that I recorded in a very long time where I'm nervous that the guest is going to say something wrong. Usually I'm worried that I'm going to go too far. And now I'm like, oh shit.
Well, you have to realize I don't care.
I know, but I still have to. I
because
don't want to
I
get kicked
literally-
off of YouTube or booted from
Look,
Blumen Post.
anything-
No, I'm
but
joking. I'm
anything
doing
I
a
tell
bit.
you
Yeah.
is true
Yeah,
and
yeah,
not
yeah.
libelous because it's true.
Okay.
But let's talk about the Sacklers, right? For a
Yeah.
second, because that's the epitome of the worst patronage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
In other words, dirty, dirty, dirty money, buying really great art and then donating that great art to museums. And is it or is it not okay, right?
And are there any particular paintings or pieces that they've done that with that you have at the top of your mind? Do you know what's in their collection? I was gonna say, do you know what's in their collection? But do you know anything that they've donated? You don't have to make the
I
point.
think they were on the board of the Guggenheim and they got kicked off or something. I mean,
Okay.
I don't really know the really story about the Sacklers,
Yeah, yeah.
but I know there's a really interesting problem there. If you're an institution, I mean, because that's how art becomes valuable, right?
Yeah.
Is that collectors buy it, they promote it to the museums buy it and show it and showcase it, and then the culture absorbs and accepts it. And then suddenly it's like vastly sort of, within the contemporary canon. And if it's lucky, turns into like the sort of ever-present canon, right?
Mm.
And it all happens through this discourse that happens between artist, collector, dealer, museum, critic, right?
Mm.
Although the critic, I think, has less and less say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And money has more and more say, right? And so if you look at the Sacklers and you look at all the good or bad, or the Broads, or whoever, it doesn't even matter.
The
right?
Broads got shady money too?
No, but the Broad Museum, in my opinion, this is an opinion. This is not a fact. I'm not about to say a fact. But I opine the Broad Museum was created as a way to promote downtown real estate.
Oh yeah, that doesn't seem that far.
Well,
fetched,
he's
especially
a huge
what's around.
owner of downtown real
Yeah,
estate,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all the money he put into the Broad Museum, this cultural gift to which I've never been to, by the way,
Uh-huh.
but all of this, largesse of Mr. Broad to give us the Broad Museum was just a scam, so that downtown LA real estate would be inflated, which he was right. It worked, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He created sort of a cultural thing up there, right?
But that food court was there already, I think, right? No,
The food court.
there's like a little area that has a whole bunch of food right near the Broad. If you've never been to it, I guess.
Oh no, you mean down on Spring Street or wherever it is? That's great. I love that place.
I guess what is it? It's attached to the Mocha, not the Geffen, the other.
Oh, yeah. That's
Or it's not attached to it, but I guess
No,
it was
I know.
already servicing those people. Yeah.
No, then we might be talking about two different things. But Mocha was there, but it was sort of
Yeah.
isolated. Right?
Yeah.
And the Disney was there,
Yeah.
right? And it was
It's
also
still a
a little
little bit
isolated.
It's still a little bit
But
isolated
then
from
with
what
the-
we're talking about.
Then with the Broad,
Yeah.
Then the Disney, the Broad, the Mocha, it became sort of this cultural hub, right?
Yeah.
And it really sort of sexied up downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And all I'm saying is these people like the Sacklers, like the Broads, like whoever.
Yeah.
They use art as a way to justify their evilness. And I'm not saying Broad is evil. I don't know anything about the guy, right? But Sacklers, yeah, you could say they were evil, right? Like based on
No, yeah.
reality.
Yeah. There's an argument to be made there.
Yeah,
For legal purposes, I'll leave it like that.
I would say there's very little to negate that. Like there's very little on the other
I'm not
side.
going to fight
No,
you too
yeah.
hard, sir.
But what I'm really trying to say to you is that the art industry is all about all of that kind of stuff. The problem is that history has, since the Renaissance, been related to the art industry and not the art community.
Yeah.
And
I mean, just looking at all Christian art that I grew up like studying and whatnot.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so if you can't participate in the art industry, and I would say I would love to participate in the art industry would not love to participate in me. But if you can't participate in the art industry, chances are your work will be forgotten. Like 99.99% your work is going to be forgotten. So if you're an artist, you sort of have to aspire to the art industry if you care to preserve, the work, right?
Yeah.
But if you're me and you're 65 and you've never been able to do that, you say, fuck it. And you say, like, I'm just going to paint because I'm compelled to paint. And that's the only reason I paint is because I'm compelled to paint.
Well, it's working for you because you look pretty good for 65.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm about to be 65.
It's there you have it. You're living in your own blue zone. Have you ever heard of that?
What is that?
That's like that places in the world where people are like the healthiest and live the longest because they have like satisfying lives and whatnot. Apparently there's a lot of them in Japan.
I'm very lucky. I'm very privileged and very lucky, and I can only thank God or whatever, right?
Can I ask you? So I don't want to detract too much and take us too far away from the trifecta thing because it is interesting. But can you said that you had a little success in the 80s?
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Like at what level did you get to? Because it seems like you may have been trying and then like coming up against what.
Well, I had a kid,
yeah.
So I needed lots of money, and I had a wife who didn't want me to be a painter.
Really?
Well, she liked money too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
who doesn't?
Who
To
doesn't,
be
right?
real.
But what happened was there was a bunch of us kids in the late 70s, early 80s, and we really were kids, and real estate in the East Village, Lower East Side was crazy cheap. I was paying $125 a month for a very small apartment on Delancey Street, but I was only working 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And I could easily afford my rent and food and booze and drugs and my life.
And the hierarchy of needs maybe was shuffled at that time.
Right. And I could get laid, right?
Yeah,
so like life was working for me, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't know.
What year was this again?
This was like the late 70s, early 80s, right?
Okay.
And we didn't know that we were making history. Like we
Yeah.
had no clue. We were just having loads of fun and trying to get famous.
Yeah.
It's not like we didn't care about that stuff, but we didn't know that we were important to the history of art. Like we had no clue, right? And yet, from that world emerged, Jean-Michel, Keith Haring, Martin Wong, all these really great artists, right? David Wojnarowicz. And we were all just pals, like hanging out and smoking and like having fun, right? And some of us got elevated and some of us didn't. And some of the dealers went by the wayside and some of the dealers became PPOW. It's like there was
PPOW.
It's a gallery in New York, big gallery in New York.
Okay.
But when I met them, the dealers from PPOW, they were just like every other tiny little gallery in the Lower East Side. It was just like two kids from Long Island who wanted to sell art, didn't know how, right? And it was the same with the artists. It's like it was just this group of us, I mean, Madonna, whoever, right? Who just, we hung out, and then some of us became very famous and very big. I was represented by decent galleries, but never really good galleries.
So like what level? Like how many million were they making? You use that as a
in this world, less than five.
Less than five.
They wouldn't have been major players, right?
So they would have been in the night gallery realm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that kind of.
But you were represented.
That kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
that-
I was
that
exactly at that level
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
night gallery level. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny. I don't know why, but Night Gallery has become kind of the the standard measuring stick. Maybe because I can't say Francois Guibali that well, but it is and maybe it just is a cultural reference point
Well,
for a
they're
lot
also
of people.
good at promoting themselves, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would say, I mean, there's probably stuff in Hollywood that's at the same level. You know, maybe Hollywood is just a little bit too. No one wants to drive to Hollywood, kind of a thing.
I don't know. I mean,
Well,
Reagan,
I mean, I just
Reagan
don't.
Project's just in Hollywood.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Right? I'll go
Like,
there. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
But they're way above Night Gallery in terms of stature, right?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Because they're sort of playing in the Barbara Gladstone realm, right? Or it's a whole different.
Ball game. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've also been around a very long time.
Yeah, I'm not very versed in that world.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm very steeped in the LA art community and not at all familiar with the LA art industry. Like
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be honest with you, and horribly I don't even care. Like I don't like whatever.
Yeah.
It's like oh I should go see that show. I really should. I should. Or like I looked at the list of all the Whitney artists, in the biannual. I'm horrified. I don't think I know one person.
Oh yeah.
I literally don't think I know one person. And it might be the first time ever that that's true.
I think for me it's different, where I'm starting to feel like, because I'll have people come on, and then they'll start referencing people that they know, and I know they're super famous, and I'm like sitting here listening. I'm not pretending to know who they are, but I'm like not interrupting them, because then I would just stop them every time, And it's so like one of the things that I want to start doing is a live stream where I like Google like literally who is in the fucking Whitney Biennial.
Well, it'd be cool
And
if you
that-
put that monitor into the thing and you could just do it, right?
Oh yeah, well I can also just flip everything
no,
around.
I understand. Or it could just be a fourth camera, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
you could splice it in later.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, no, I mean I'm
but
just
my
gonna
point
do
is,
it.
is
Go
that
ahead.
is that it. I know that if one is a painter, it is very important to understand what's taking place within the community, and the industry is part of the community.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. yeah.
And-
Well, we all kind of function on the trickle down economics of it, right? In the sense of like, I think a lot of people are out in LA, and like live here specifically because there is a scene, right? As opposed to like, for example, I was just in Miami and I love Miami. It has Basel and all of that. But in terms of like, no, you're fine. Galleries that make less than like 5 million, I don't know, or that make them more than 5 million. There's definitely nothing like that, right? And so,
Unless they're franchises, unless they're a brand of someone else's gallery. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, yeah.
Gagosian probably has a Miami gallery. I bet they do.
yeah,
right?
exactly. But I mean, no one really knows.
Right.
Like, I mean, I would be surprised if, anyway, most of what I went to when I was growing up were artist collections. So like what is big over there is that there's the Margulies, and then now there's the Perez. There's all these people that have huge collections, and they're basically museums that you go and you look at their stuff, and they rotate, whatever. So it's essentially a museum, but it's presented as a collection. And so
And they're still privately owned by the people, right?
yeah, they're still privately
They haven't
owned.
been gifted anywhere. They're not non-tax and all that.
I doubt it. I don't know. I can't give you the specifics. But anyway, that's the extent of like what there is to see. Like if you want to go to say like a Hauser and Wirth, you're going to see stuff. You're going to go to a space that has stuff that's like maybe not the newest. It's not the latest. It's in terms of planned obsolescence. It's like you're seeing work that has
last
been
year's model.
yeah, last year's model. You're not at the cutting edge. Whereas if you're in a city like Los Angeles, even though it's not New York by a long shot, still like the more I do this, the more I realize like LA is still a pretty small art market compared to like
Well, it's
London.
provincial.
Yeah,
provincial.
compared to like anything
And New York
else.
has retained the capital. Right?
Yeah.
New York is
Yeah.
still the capital.
Yeah.
And then there's places like, LA,
Hong Kong, Paris,
which are provincial.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I would
And there's important provincial things and less
Yeah,
important. And LA is
exactly.
definitely in the second tier, for sure.
yeah, for sure. But it's interesting how that makes a vibrant community. Like in terms of what you were
But what I'm saying is it's almost like too
It's
adjacent things.
they're two adjacent things, but I don't think.
See, you're looking at it hierarchically, which is the way I always looked at it, right?
Okay, that's fair. The way I'm framing it is, yeah.
And I don't see it that way because, like, someone
Most
like
people
me,
aren't trying to get into it. Yeah.
No. I mean, look, anybody to turn down millions of dollars would be an idiot, right?
Yeah.
Like, so most of us would love to be part of it, right? And those of us who say we wouldn't love to be a part of it, like, maybe you're telling the truth, maybe you're not. Who knows? But the community of artists is this really nurturing, loving, good thing. And I will use a moral term, right? Where people support people and people's work.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. The art industry is this brutal, competitive place in which a zero-sum game is played. And it's abrasive, and because capitalism is so currently corrupt, the art industry, which is unregulated, is amazingly more corrupt than most of the rest of capitalism.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And so, not succeeding in the art industry, I just want to say to artists, it's not really a mark on whether you're a good artist or a bad artist.
Yeah,
it's a mark
100%.
on whether you can meet the model of capitalism and embrace it, and so on and so forth. And then people like Mark Bradford that we were discussing, who both bite the hand that feeds it and are fully participating in the hand that feeds it. You know, they must live very strange lives.
Yeah.
Like how they like wake up in the morning and justify living both lives. Like, I don't know quite how they do it.
No, 100%. I think though, my point is that without it, the art community doesn't really have anywhere to gravitate towards, right? Like, yeah, there's like people going to, like, I mean, I'm sure most artists, I mean, I could be wrong, would think that moving to Los Angeles gets you closer to other, at least opportunities of showing, just because,
Oh, sure.
you know, and without that industry in this town for people that are interested in this stuff that can go see the latest model, like, I don't think the community gravitates here as much. Not, I know it's like a huge city.
Talk more about that.
Yeah, I know it's like a huge city in general, but like,
I'm literally not sure what you're saying. Are you saying that
the art industry in LA draws an art community because there are services here that we enjoy, even if the scene is capitalist, cutthroat, and all of that, and most of us aren't going to get into it. We would like to be somewhere where we can do the cultural experience of going to galleries.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of what and I don't know if that makes it hierarchical. Obviously, I don't disagree with the points you've made. But it is an interesting, maybe it's parasitic.
Or symbiotic.
Symbiotic, yeah.
Right.
But it is an interesting thing because it, like, you know, I've made an effort to try to like understand what a lot of the scenes are outside of LA and New York, you know, and the more I interview people, the more that ceiling drops off, and without that ceiling, there isn't like that much of a. There's opportunities, but there's not this, like, I would say LA per capita has more artist run spaces than, you know, somewhere else.
Oh, sure.
That's not to say. So then that means that the concentration of artists like that have their wherewithal to make community and congregate and make stuff happen together in terms of forming collectives and stuff like that, that happens less because there's less of the people pursuing that.
No, absolutely, and I think there's both symbiosis and the other thing, like self-devouring, whatever, parasitic, right?
Yeah.
Elements to it, and I do think they're very intertwined. But I think for me, and this is really just for me, and maybe it's got to do with my age and my sort of resignation, the art industry is completely uninteresting. And the art community is very interesting. And it's because I'm so hateful of capitalism and the art industry is so corruptly capitalistic,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I just don't. It makes me want to vomit, like to think about it, you know. And on the other hand, listen, I make my living in these highly, you know, like, I mean, huge industries. Like the company that I consult for currently is a $90 billion company,
Yeah.
right? So it's not like I'm not participating,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
but
It's hard to have an expressive voice and express. You're limited in what you can say within the confines of the industry, the art industry. Whereas you can keep that
your
safe.
voice. Like I don't doubt for a minute that I'm not a fan of Jeff Koons, but I don't doubt for a minute that Jeff Koons' authentic voice is what we see,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And that what he has created is exactly who he is, right?
When you say you don't like Jeff Koons personally,
Oh,
or
I know. I never met the guy.
Okay.
Or I think I met him once or something, but I don't know him at all.
you just don't like the work.
I do remember his first show, which was great. By the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And I remember being overwhelmedly, like I loved it, right?
Yeah.
But once he started just doing all the silver stuff and like, which started as liquor bottles, you know,
Mm.
it's just not like, it doesn't interest me. you
No,
know?
that's fine. I do tend to be something of an apologist.
Plus, he's such a bad draftsman. The man cannot draw for his life. Have you seen his drawings?
No.
Jeff, your drawings suck.
Okay, I'm a Koons apologist. I was gonna say that at least you say it doesn't do anything for you, rather than like you, because sometimes some people have very visceral hate to it. But I do think
you know what I do hate about Jeff Koons?
Okay.
When in the same interview with some newspaper, he said, "I'm just a regular guy,
Yeah, yeah.
but I like to take my helicopter from my studio to my Berkshire home every Friday." It's like, dude, you can't have both. Like,
He doesn't have a sense of irony, you don't think, in saying that? I don't know. I'd have to read it in context.
it felt like I once knew a guy.
It felt pretentious, not.
No, it didn't even feel pretentious. It felt like this is real for him. Like every human being thinks they're a regular human being, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I don't know if that's true.
like Elon Musk has to sit on the John just like you and me, right?
No, I don't. I honestly,
even most hated Donald Trump has to sit on the John like you and me, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think that there's an oblivion to privilege. Like if you're amazingly privileged, you're also amazingly oblivious. Because how can you live with yourself with all of that privilege in this world if you don't ignore reality?
I honestly don't think that any of the three people you've mentioned, particularly Trump, because I've heard him speak about himself, thinks he's a regular person.
That's true. He thinks he's a star, right? But so does Jeff Koons probably, right?
So that's the first premise that I'm going to reject, because I
Okay,
think
you're right.
I think there's a lot of people that don't think they're normal people, but it's fair. I get.
Well, no, Trump thinks he's God. So,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm sure that Bezos and all these other people do too. There has to be something broken in your brain to think that you deserve that much more than other people. You can't think like, I'm a regular guy and then just like fucking take shit from people. You know what I mean? Especially in the Bezos aspect of like, you know. Anyway, I hear you. I think we agree. I didn't mean to be so assertive.
You're right. All I'm saying is like it's like the notion of racism, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever in your entire life met a human being who said, "Oh, I'm a racist"?
I mean, yeah.
You have really?
I'm from Florida, dude.
Oh, okay.
Because
I never have. Like they all say, I'm not a racist, right?
Yeah, no, I'm from Florida.
And they'll go, "Oh, I'm a racist."
Yeah, like straight up, and then you're just like, okay, good to know. Peace.
Peace, right? Goodbye. Well, and like I work with these people who are from the South, right?
Yeah.
And one day I was saying some crack about Trump, and this woman says to me, "Oh, I love Trump." And I said, "You do?" And she said, "Oh yeah, he's great. Like yeah." And I said, "But he's a criminal." And she said, "Well, they're all criminals." And it's like, okay. And what do you do with it, right? Because you're working with this person. What are you going to say? Like, "Oh, you're acting immoral"? Like, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But I think most of us have a sense of what's really going on.
Uh-huh.
And those of us who sort of are embracing all of this stuff that's going on, there has to be cognitive dissonance. I just don't understand it, you know?
Yeah, I think I've been getting on a whole kick on understanding that kind of thing, and it's interesting. Like, it's in terms of like the art market, I've always had a sort of ambivalence with like being an artist and also being high key aware that at the highest level, like if I want to, you know, be a professional, like it's a very corrupt and like not happy place, you know. It's the realm of,
On the other hand, it's private jets and lots of happiness, right? Like,
yeah.
when I watch Ludacris in his, you know, resort wherever the heck in,
Wait,
you know,
you watch Ludacris in what
Instagram,
context?
Instagram,
Oh,
right?
okay.
When I see Ludacris on
You follow
Instagram,
this on-
of course I do. He's fun.
you know, he's amazing. I'm just.
But when I
I'm a
watch
fan.
him with his beautiful wife in this beautiful tropical retreat, or DJ Khaled in his LA mansion, right? When I look at their gorgeous lives, you know, there's a lot to be said for their gorgeous lives. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. The thing that gets me is just like, who's your social circle? You know, like who are you? You're not going to be hanging like Skip. If I was in that realm, I wouldn't necessarily have that much in common with you anymore, other than maybe art, right? Like,
right.
so who would be the people that I had stuff in common with, and would they be people that like I think that there is something that comes with money where you're like your ethics need to kind of change
Maybe.
to, you know, like
to just justify your life.
yeah, exactly. It's
know.
yeah.
I mean, I will tell you honestly, I grew up with rich people in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not my life now and whatever. But I really grew up in this sort of very upper class New York world, right?
Mm-hmm.
In which, yeah, the people were oblivious. And one of the things that would happen when we would, like, I'd go to my friend's house for dinner, right? Whatever friend it was, the dad would always say, "You guys don't get it.
Yeah.
You're living in this world of privilege. You just don't even know what the real world is like."
Yeah.
And they were so right, you know? So I think more for the unself-made person, there's this sort of like loss of reality.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for people who sort of pulled themselves up for the gutter, I think they remember.
Yeah.
And I think that they try to surround themselves with old friends or stuff.
Yeah, but then at a certain point is you end up just having to feed your whole entourage. That is going to change your, you know, like
Yeah, because you're
your
the-
relationship.
yeah.
The dynamics are completely different in that context. You know, you see it with a lot of rappers that that keep an entourage. I forget who it was, but they were talking about how like they realized that if that money was gone, like they're gone too. You know, if they and so it's, or if you just try to money is such a powerful thing, right? Like that, like
Well, power is powerful.
yeah,
And money is power.
yeah,
right?
for sure. But it's like it's interesting to think of like how does your life change, you know? And I guess you could maybe just keep it low key, but then you're also like hiding something from people. So then it's not
And then it's a pretense.
yeah, it's a
when you
pretense.
talk about like Warren Buffett or
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar or whatever, like who pretend to be living, you know.
Oh, Kendrick
ordinary-
Lamar, you're like very. Do you have kids?
No, I just like rap music.
I'm such a dad rap aficionado. I don't listen to any of the new stuff, but I mean, although Ludacris, like I can get down with Ludacris.
Yeah, but that's 90s. I mean, that's old
I'm
school,
saying,
right?
yeah. So I'm saying, like, you're not only bringing up Kendrick is a little newer for me,
Right.
but I didn't know that there was this hate for, or that I had never heard that sentiment that he is posing as.
Well, my understanding is that until fairly recently, he lived in Compton.
Yeah.
And he stayed living in Compton on purpose. And I don't think he does anymore because he didn't want that whole sort of star life, you know? Or people like, and I forget the person I'm thinking of, who live like in the middle of nowhere because they don't want to be in that world, right? And they go to like Nebraska and live in Nebraska, you know, and then everybody just knows them as their neighbor, even though they're world famous and so on and so forth. I mean, I think if you are at that level, there are ways to stay ordinary if you wish to.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that someone said, some Trumpy judge, some judge who's judging Trump, said this sentence that I thought was really cool, said something like the sirens of fame, that they were tempted to the sirens of fame, right? And fame is like a siren. You know, a siren is like in the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Well, for all of you guys, like a siren is someone who sings to you and you jump overboard and drown, right? So I do think there's a siren song of fame, and we all want it because it's power, right?
I can tell you there is. I mean, just the little recognition I get doing this show changes like dynamics for me, and it's strange because it just feels different. But then like I've been saying, I spent some time in Miami to just kind of get away from LA for a little while, take a little break, and I went to like art spaces, and there was nobody that not that people like know me, but like there was nobody
No, I
that
understand.
that I knew that was like knew any. I had no connection to anybody at all, and it was like super refreshing. But it was also kind of like, hey,
No, I hear you. I hear you. I used to love the fact that I could, in New York in the 80s, right? I could walk into a room and, you know,
Yeah,
within 5 minutes, 5 people who I knew would be talking to me, right?
yeah. And that's just all the work that you've done in being in the scene and like showing up to people's shows and stuff like that. So
Well, no, also because people wanted to kiss my ass because I was demi famous, right?
yeah,
So it wasn't just that people knew me; it's that people
Yeah.
wanted to know me.
yeah, I think having a platform kind of plays into that. Although,
No, of course,
yeah,
of course.
not to the same degree as like,
Oh no, believe me.
Yeah.
You know, but still, it is very, very, very seductive, right?
yeah, no, I 100%. Like you do, like when it's not happening, you're like, it's not that it made me uncomfortable. It's that I was like, like, okay, here's the story, and I know that I've known for a while that I was going to tell it on the show, so this is a perfect opportunity. But I was, okay, I went. I'm not going to say the space because I don't want to like insult the people that were
But
frequenting.
you're way more diplomatic than I am.
Yeah, well, I have to get.
This is the advantage of like almost being 65.
Yeah, well, one of the trappings of this life is that I have to make sure that people want to come on the show.
No, of course. Of course.
But yeah, so I was at a venue and it was like a breakfast thing they had invited, and I was like, oh, cool. I felt it always feels nice to be invited
Of
directly
course.
by
The
somebody
dinner, the breakfast, whatever. It feels great. Yeah.
So I went, and it was like lightly populated. Though it wasn't like an opening thing, but I was like there. I said hi to somebody that I knew, and then I walked up to the like food buffet area and started eating stuff, and there was this guy there, and I was like making small talk. I said to him, oh man, I'm so glad you're eating something, because like that makes me feel less weird about being the only one hitting the table, like just something like non-committal, super low-key. Dude did not even acknowledge me. And I was like right next to him, and so like I don't know, man. Like I experienced that, and I was like, and I think that kind of has to do with more cultural things, because I think in LA no one would ever really do that unless it was a woman and she thought I was trying to hit on her,
Right.
But like people out here are a lot more open. I think there's a lot of New Yorkers down there that are like a little bit less willing to like meet a complete stranger. But I was like, the point of the story is that I just like when that happened, it didn't rattle me. But I was just like, it was like early in the morning. I was like, I just don't care.
No, exactly.
And it's like, this is going to be a lot more work than it usually is, because I would have to like stand around and talk to people, talk to entirely strangers, and then how you work a room like that. But I was just like, eh. So there is, a convenience to the privilege of that. And again, it like, when it does suck when you don't know anybody,
Right.
It's been a while since I've been in an art scene where that happened. I did know people there, but not at the scale that I've interviewed 200 people here. I've met people in the art world. But going back to another thing that you said about privilege and like, I recently had dinner with my sister, and there is something to the shared experience that I have with her, and it is like like we grew up. I for people that don't know, but most of the listeners know, I don't know if you know, I grew up in Italy. My dad worked for the UN. We got to travel a lot, and like mostly through Europe, not too many different places. I've been to Spain, I've been to France, but a lot of Italy, and Italy was a lot of different city states, so it was very entertaining landscape. Like it changes. It's a peninsula, and as you go up, You know, you have Lazio, then you have Tuscany and all of that. And there was a comfort in knowing that she came from that same
Sure.
experience. And it was like, it was nice to just be like people that had that, it was nice to not be worried about her, you know, to understand that she was okay, that she, like, financially she was fine and all of those things. And that feeling of like, you know, I don't know, there was a comfort there that I think, is an interesting thing in terms of like, you know, you were saying like being completely blind to certain struggles. Like,
Yeah.
it is nice to just be like, oh, it's nice that we got away with like avoiding all the horrors of life, you know, like,
Right.
it really is sort of a thing of like being like, hey, we kind of, all of my problems have mostly been like, you know, dealing with mental health stuff, not like knowing if I could eat and shit like that. And like, I do find that in this industry, even within the community, there's a lot of people that come from like a background, like you were talking about,
Of extreme privilege.
of extreme poverty. There are some, but
Some, yeah.
but the
Both,
majority, but I
or
would say
privilege, yeah.
a majority, because there is like an idleness. So there's also that level of like, there's that part of the whole thing. You know, as I interview people, I listen to different people's experiences, and you know, I try to have people from all different backgrounds, all, you know, all different races and whatnot. And a lot of times the experience that you have is noticing that even within the mix of races and, you know, genders and all of that, there is still a tendency towards privilege, right? So it's an interesting thing, this space. Like, the community has a lot of, or do you find differently?
No, I actually completely agree with you. And I was just thinking that being an artist is in and of itself, even within poverty, a privilege.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're given access in ways that you wouldn't be given access if you were of the same socioeconomic station, because you're an artist,
Yeah.
especially if you're a young artist, that you would never be given access to if it was just like you had exactly the same amount of money, you had the same cultural sort of like, you know, legacy that you come from. You wouldn't get access to these things, these communities, these ideas, and so on and so forth. So the very act of being an artist, wherever you come from, does give you a great deal of privilege, in my opinion.
No, yeah, 100%. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, there are definitely exceptions. Like, I think I remember Purvis. I mean, there's plenty of people that I've had on the show that have struggled, you know?
Sure, of course.
And it's always an interesting thing in terms of like the amount of, like, if there's like obviously people will have an art practice with the intention of of being able to sell work, right? But I don't think that is the main driving factor in people. I feel like it's a lot of people that have like, for example, if you're a kid and you see that your parents are poor all the time, you're going to be thinking about that, as opposed to having broader, more like grandiose thoughts about, like, idle thoughts and whatnot. But it is an interesting thing to you know, like, just this idea of making the time to labor with no guarantee that it's going to pay off financially, sometimes with no intention of having it paid off, with no intention of getting a grant or anything, doing performance work and things like that. It's an interesting expression. Like, without agriculture, I don't think that exists. Does that make sense?
I think I know what you're saying, and I think I agree with you. I think it comes back to this notion of that: do artists work, or do any artists who are young and ambitious work without this notion of the sirens of fame influencing them? And I would posit probably not. Right?
Yeah.
Probably as artists get to be like my age, who've not become commercially canonical.
That's the first time I've heard it phrased like that, and that's actually really good wording. Go ahead.
But if you're like me, like that, then you have to reconcile And then you have to say, well, should I stop painting? And I can't. I'm not able to. I've tried to do it and I can't. What do I do with all these things? What's going to happen to them after I'm dead?
Mm-hmm.
And you just, eventually you just go like, it doesn't matter because I can't stop doing this thing.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that actually, it's the one constant love I've had in my life for the last 50 years is being a painter, right? And, you know, marriage has failed. Like, of course I love my child, don't get me wrong. But, and deeply, like it's deeply because I love my paintings. But this notion of hopelessness and being an artist, it is, I think, something that comes with sort of artists of my age, and not something that someone who's in their 20s can even imagine.
Yeah. But did you ever, when you were younger, maybe this has to do a little bit with some of the success you were seeing, being represented and whatnot. You didn't feel like you had no other skills? Because I think that a lot of people, you know, a lot of
people who make it think that they couldn't have done anything else.
But I think also a lot of people that at this stage are not even ambitious or are not don't have the ambition. Sorry, they are ambitious in their own way. Don't have the ambition of maybe becoming a you know, represented by a Zorner, or I feel like to some degree there is also not really much of a choice for some people. Like I hear what you're saying. Maybe there's a loss of hope at a certain point, but I think like the burden of being an artist strikes young too.
Right.
You still have maybe the hope of like hitting it big, but I definitely, like every artist I know, I'm pretty sure could not stop making art and be happy. You know, I've stopped I've stopped making art and just been sad.
Right.
You know, but like put it on the back burner and just kind of felt like life was empty and meaningless and I don't know what to do with that. But taking that time, I don't know, maybe and I think it goes to kind of what we're talking about, where like
but
commercialism doesn't necessarily validate the artist. The art.
No, it's a challenge of its own, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Because how do you stay fresh when you've got a brand to maintain?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
But I think to your point, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's like, for me, recently there's been a transition.
Mm-hmm.
Until I would say 2 years ago, I always painted for an audience.
Mm.
I always thought about the viewer as being an essential part of my work. And even as I worked, I would think about this triangle of me, well, actually maybe a quadrupod, right? Me, history, what I'm trying to say, and the audience, right? In the last few years, since I've sort of attained this sort of hopelessness of audience, I don't give a fuck about the audience anymore. Mm. And it's actually probably making my work worse, not better, to be honest with you, right? I mean, I'm not at all happy with my work right now. It seems sort of wandering around in the middle of nowhere, you know?
But you're in a transition, so you've transitioned before, I'm sure, and been like that's part of that process, right?
But giving up on the audience is really heavy. You know, like not caring about the audience. Now, I think some artists, they live their whole lives without caring about the audience, right? But I've lived my whole life with this notion of myself as a part of a sort of very, very long and elaborate history that sort of is many dialects across many cultures across the entire planet for 40, 50,000 years, right? Mm-hmm. And me being a part of this dialogue, right? Now saying, well, maybe I'm not a part of the dialogue. Maybe I'm just someone who responds to the dialogue.
Who did you feel like you needed to, or how did you feel like you wanted to present yourself? Like what would be some touchstones of that that you've let go? You know, like.
Well, first of all, I don't care about European art anymore.
All of art history, essentially.
Oh, don't say that. I mean,
no, that's
so untrue. Like
I know,
what you just
but
said. It's like so not true. That's the problem. Look, I'm sorry. There's great traditions of Indian art. I mean, like Asian
no, I
art.
understand what you're saying.
There's great traditions of Asian art. There's great traditions of African art. Like European art is only one part of art history.
I'm not saying that those are invalid. I'm saying with awareness to the way that the world thinks about
Look,
stuff.
I was once in the back of a limousine with an Indian gazillionaire, right? And because of my technology work, and he was taking me from one city, Mumbai, to another city, Pune, which is about 3 hours away. And he's a guy who went to Oxford, got a graduate degree in Oxford, and he's very, very, very rich. He founded one of the big Indian technology companies. And he's telling me that there is no history before colonial India.
Mm-hmm.
And he really believed it. And it was so, and he's an Indian man. And it was so sad for me. And I said, well, wait a second. Like what about all of like Indian art? And he was a big, big, big art collector.
Mm.
I said, what about all of India? And he only collects Indian contemporary art. I said, what about like all of the statues? What about all of the paintings? What about all of the Indian art that's been here for thousands of years? And he didn't even respond to the question. He just went on to, with his big cigar, talking about his life and so on and so forth. So I do think that colonialism and white imperialism has like clouded all of our vision of history. But I'm not going to participate in the idea that history is
I was
European.
making a joke.
Okay,
man.
sorry. I just don't like it. I'm sorry. It's not a joke that I'm friendly with, right? Because many people would agree with you.
Oh no, I don't think most people nowadays subscribe to that. You know, like my point was that most people know who Giotto is, and probably not the first person that learned how to paint 3D in India or whatever. You know, like I was just making a joke about that. I'm not in support
It's not
of
a
it.
joking matter because we're all so influenced by that way of thinking, and that way of thinking is so clouded. Not me,
Yeah.
like because when you said what's changed. And when I said, well, I don't care about European art anymore, I was serious. It's like,
Well, no, and I think that that's fair. I'm interested in having that conversation rather than arguing whether or not the joke was tasteless.
right. But what I'm saying is that I'm a victim of that joke.
Yeah.
It took me forever to realize that aspiring to the constructs of modernism was ludicrous and stupid. It took me until recently to realize that innovation wasn't at all interesting. It took me until the last 5 weeks to realize that even, and I know we're probably out of time or whatever.
No, we're not. We've gone an hour and a half. We can keep going.
Okay.
You know, this is a pretty dense conversation.
It took me. I mean, I would say it's like very, very, very recently that I realized that I don't have an understanding of how to be a white male artist. Because if I reject European art and I accept the idea that like one should make art from one's own cultural center, and I reject the cultural center that I am, then what am I left with? Right? Like.
Yeah, I think I would argue that unfortunately, if we look historically at what is considered popular, you know, what is considered the art history according to the Western perspective, it follows a lot of that industry talk that we're talking about now, right? It was never really, was never really a pure thing.
Of course.
So from that starting point, I think it's fair to, I think it's fair to sort of reject the preferences of the past, right? But at the same time, who had the money back then? It's the same. It's, you know, the church is no longer running that market. The church was just the most powerful thing where where the money was coming from. Before that, it was paganism, right? In classical period, you know, you have the Greeks and all of that, and the Romans, but like, I don't know. It's fine to want to explore other things, but I think a lot of discourse in white spaces right nowadays is very much about doing something that's kind of unattainable, which is to sort of, it's not an erasure of history. Like, and I think there's a danger in which you've acknowledged. I'm not accusing you of this. I think I'm basically just paraphrasing what you said, but yeah, of like fetishizing other cultures because, or exoticizing them,
Or appropriating.
or well, appropriating them is a given. But I'm just saying,
Right,
like,
right.
in terms of that, I think, you know, going back to your earlier statement, I think that the stuff that is resonant over time is the stuff that someone has the vision to understand the context within which they live and all of that. Are people getting pushed out? I mean, that's the reality of that world that they were documenting, right? So like, it doesn't matter how progressive and how on the money somebody that was not fascist during the futurist period in fascist Italy, you know, like the stuff that resonated from that group were not, you know, we're not non-fascist.
No,
do,
I understand.
Do you understand what I'm
And
saying?
by the way, it's not as if fascism is particularly European, right? Or you know,
Well,
crazy power.
yeah.
Is, and I know you're very focused on fascism as like exactly
Well, there's capital F fascism, which
right,
is,
and I'm thinking small f.
yeah, small
Right.
f, yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that it's not as if other cultures weren't equally power hungry and corrupt, right?
Oh, that's not even what I was alluding to, but go ahead.
Okay, but I will say, like, at least for me, when I visualize art history in the last maybe 15 years, right? Instead of having this very linear sort of way we're taught it, it's like this leads to this, leads to this.
I'm
You
with
did
you.
the whole thing, Egypt to Greece to right? But instead of that, I sort of think of a sphere, which is the planet, and I think of like 50,000 years because I'm mostly interested in two-dimensional art. And the fact that these marks have been made on two-dimensional surfaces for 50,000 years all over the planet, most of which survived in one way or another, at least remnants of it, sufficiently so that we can sort of see it and unearth it and excavate it. And then to your point about fetishizing appropriation and so on and so forth, one wants not to steal, I mean, except that stealing is what we do all day long in terms of being an artist, right? But I don't know. To me, it's too complicated to even, like, my brain gets foggy.
I think also it's really in the moment right now. It's really hard to feel, especially like for someone who also, I don't really feel that inspired by what is happening. Although I am not up to date on what is being shown in these huge institutions we're referring to, right? In the, like, mostly I'll just go to spaces around here. If like I think the last show that I really saw was the Krypton show at Hauser and Wirth in that tier of a gallery, right? Like most of the time I'm probably hanging out at friends shows, which are, which is more community minded
More last
activity.
project sort of places.
Yeah. And then in terms of commercial spaces, I'll go to the Gibalis and the night markets or the
Night gallery.
Night market. Night market's another thing where people make food out here in LA. Just a heads up, you have your water right there.
Or Bangkok.
But yeah, it does feel like, it feels hard for me to imagine a world where those spaces are showing work that can transcend the institutionality of those spaces, right? Like that seems, and it's possible that it's happening and I'm just not aware of it, but that seems very almost like, I mean, I am going to start looking at stuff, but it goes, I think it ties into what you were saying about art history. It's hard to imagine art history as a linear thing, right?
But that's what we're taught.
But I'm saying, like, we're at a moment where that sort of idea is kind of dissolving, right?
Right. Hopefully.
It does feel like it does feel like,
Although I will say, like, within academia, it's not
yeah.
dissolving, right?
No, academia is very much. I said this in another episode, but I've been really getting into trying to understand postmodernism in its like truest form, not like what people think of postmodernism in culture and in art school, but like actually reading postmodernism and trying to understand it. And a lot of it is completely undecipherable, and a lot of it is completely nonsensical. There's a book that I've mentioned on the show called Fashionable Nonsense that is basically physicists that understand the language that postmodernists use, which is like language of science and mathematics and stuff like that. So people that are experts in science and physics looking at this stuff and basically deconstructing that it's either something trite, even if it's a metaphor, or that it doesn't actually make sense and is not a one-to-one translation. So a lot of the case that's being made is that a lot of what happens in the humanities is very much detached from the world because it has gone away from the Enlightenment, the ideas of the Enlightenment, the ideas of rationality and whatnot, which is why we find ourselves in this postmodern space where I don't even know that we believe the same things, but we both think that we're right. You know what I mean? like in terms of like the current moment in the world. And I think that
when you were talking about Rembrandt earlier,
yeah,
and I'm interrupting you and I apologize, but
go ahead.
When you were talking about Rembrandt earlier, and I realized like there's two tracks in human history, right? There's the technology track and there's the Platonic track. I don't know how else to put it, right? Mm-hmm. But when you think about a Rembrandt, or when you think about a Plato or Aristotle or Confucius or whatever, right? Where their work is quite old and yet it continues to resonate, right?
Yeah.
Because it contains some, and I hate to use this word, but some truth, because of postmodernism, I hate to use this word. There's some truth to it which we can relate to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's that sort of art track, right, where it doesn't matter that it's thousands of years old by a culture that we don't understand because we can identify with it. And then there's the technology track where things are always rapidly changing and evolving and maybe making life better or worse for us or whatever, right? I do think there's a profound reality to postmodernism. In other words, I do think we're past the modern moment and we're in some other age. And we sort of identified it as, quote, postmodernism in art, and we sort of, talk about sort of the French way of like formulating it, a million years ago, and then all the academics sort of way of sort of like interpreting it and so on and so forth. And for me, the problem with the way in which postmodernism is taught and practiced is it's always somehow ironic and somehow nasty.
Well, one of the tenets
and doesn't believe in truth, or beauty, or whatever. I'm much more of a fan of Wittgenstein, who described, and I'm not going to be able to quote him or anything, but sort of paraphrase him, maybe I can. For him, it's like you and me, were in a room, right? And like I could see your water cup there, you could see my water cup here, and we see sort of similar objects, right? But your view of it is probably completely different than mine, right? And completely subjective, right?
Yeah.
And completely whatever.
And my references for it are maybe
Exactly,
my dad drank and he had a solo cup when he did and hit me.
Whatever.
Complete fiction, by the way. Okay. I love my father.
Yeah, my dad hit me, but not with solo cups.
No, while carrying one. I was building a picture.
But no, I understand. But what I'm saying is, for Wittgenstein, there's this essential reality, and we're circling around it, sort of fuzzily understanding it and communicating to each other about it, right? And there's the truth of the object itself, right? And then there's the vagueness of the subject looking at the object, right? Meaning you and me were the subjects looking at the object, right? But the object is true, and we're doing our best to sort of interpret it to each other. And that's the way I see the world, is not as this meaningless place like devoid of objectivity, or even devoid of moral truth,
Yeah,
right? I see the world as this place in which there is objectivity, there is God, there is moral truth, but none of those things are they're all ineffable.
What do you mean
they're
by
unspeakable.
ineffable?
They're like, you can't describe them. There's no objective way you can't get your hands around them, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I can't define ineffable, it sort of means vague. I don't know what it means exactly.
I kind of know the word, but
Yeah.
I don't. Sometimes when I'm on the show, I'm like, do I really know that word?
No, exactly. And now I'm getting in trouble because I
No,
know
no,
that
I wasn't-
no,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I know that I know that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean ineffable. It's like you can't quite like
They're unquantifiable
anchor it
in a
down,
sense.
right? And yet that doesn't negate their existence.
Yeah.
So, for example, I believe that all of us understand that murder is wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I believe even that most of us understand that killing human beings is wrong,
Mm-hmm.
which is beyond murder, right? And that like that could be actually true,
Mm-hmm.
like within our human understanding, right? That every human being feels that way. And yet at the same time, there's like all of the experience that makes it impossible to have a conversation in which we can like put it, like lock it down. Right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's the quest is like,
Well, I think that was the quest of like the the Enlightenment. It essentially it was coming to, it was very Christian in basis.
yeah, but I'm not trying to say that. So
No. Hold
where
on.
am I missing?
Hold
Go
on.
ahead, go ahead,
Hold
go
on.
ahead.
Because what you're talking about, so one of the sort of presuppositions of postmodernism, as defined by Alan Sokol and his co-author, who I should learn because I keep referencing their work, but is essentially that postmodernism is very much focused on moral relativism, and essentially that opens you up to the fact that there is no truth, right? Because like a lot of institutional dogma, it is focused on this idea of like it self isolates. It detaches itself from the truth of the atrocities that say imperialism it does, right? And we can talk about how bad colonialism used to be, but we can't necessarily acknowledge everything that's happening because morality is relative, and that's where that, like a lot of times you'll have actual activists that are out doing the work, and then you have postmodernists in institutions criticizing the work and saying that's not how you do the work, but the activists are doing the work,
Right.
and so
because of their belief.
yeah. And so for me, I would say that the person that's coming up in the against is actually fighting the fight in the activist space. For example, to throw out an example, the people that are being charged with RICO charges for protesting against Cop City, like protest is supposed to be good, right? Protest is, you're supposed to be allowed to peacefully protest, but now these with postmodern trickery, we redefine their protest as terroristic. In fact, we're using stuff that was invented, like RICO is like racketeering. It's like
I don't know the case you're talking about, by the way.
oh,
But that's
okay.
fine. That's fine.
So there's basically people. You know what Cop City is?
Hmm.
Okay, they're basically making a city for to trade police in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to have someone on the show to talk about it because it's a really interesting situation, because protesters, like basically they arrested people that were putting up money, that were donating money to put up a bail fund, and they were arresting them, and now the protesters themselves are getting charged with the same things that they charged fucking John Gotti with, right? Racketeering. Like, these people are protesting. They're not
they're not committing crimes, or because of their activism, they're like doing whatever, like
because of their
civil
activism.
disobedience. or
Well, they're
whatever.
not racketeering.
Right.
They're not like extorting people with violence, right? So it's an interesting thing how.
Well, and the Georgia RICO Act is pretty broad, I think. I mean,
I'm not that familiar. Like I said, I'm having someone
Yeah,
expert.
yeah.
I'm just using it as an example of like, well, just a couple of months and years, a couple of years ago, we were all about defunding the police and we were all about dismantling that stuff. But the people that are in academic circles or in these spaces are not coming out and showing up for this situation, right? Like, because there is like this should be something that everybody's discussing, because ultimately it's a move towards the
academics have a huge
vested. No, that's what I'm saying. Like the whole premise of Sokol's
the
work,
status quo is what they want.
The basic premise of Sokol's work is that essentially they started, like, scientists, think like the nuclear age and all of that, how much prestige science and a better living through chemistry and all of that.
No, exactly.
Like that was how people became superstars in the academic realm. And then the basic premise is that what people in humanities started doing was using scientific terminology to validate things in like things like mathematical topology, which I still don't know what the fuck it means, but like
I can imagine.
It's obtuse, and or I don't know if obtuse is the right word. It's obfuscated. You can't.
Right.
It's impenetrable, right? So you can't get into the material. You can't fully understand it to the extent that, and I've said this story before, but Sokol essentially wrote a fake article because he was so well versed in the dialogue of postmodernists, because he is a scientist and they're using his words, and he wrote an article that he later came out and said and got it published in a journal and basically was like, this is all bullshit. None of this is real. And even the highest postmodern minds that were reading these that were editors of these journals got duped, because even the postmodernists don't understand. They just see the aesthetic, right? So it's a really interesting thing that I think goes to like moral. I think the moral relativism kind of goes into that, like these institutions, right? That you have people in institutions that are anti-institution, but they're in the institutions.
Yes, it's very strange.
That's postmodernism.
But I'm almost saying something else. I'm saying the way in which postmodernism has been theorized about and taught, and the idea that modernism is over, are almost two distinct different things, right?
Okay.
So I thoroughly believe the age of modernism is done.
In terms of what? In terms of
in terms of the idea that we will reach some kind of perfection through technology and thought. Mm-hmm. That we're going to sort of become purely enlightened. That we're going to become purely
like utopian ideas.
Yeah, right. Which is the essence of modernism, in my opinion, is that we're continually becoming this perfect human, right?
I haven't heard that before, but I think that you kind of nailed it. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's over. I don't think human beings on this planet believe that technology is really serving them. I don't think human beings on this planet believe that we're all becoming more free, right?
No, I agree.
I think that human beings sort of understand that power is bone crushing, right? And that there's no way out of it. And that we're all trying to figure out in this world how to live our lives despite the fact that the world is a horrible place, right? Yeah. I mean, not personally with the people we love, but at this macro level, it's this horrible place.
No,
right?
It's psychological trauma to know that we're constantly killing people. Like with that you're going to work.
Well, and that our nation is participating. Right?
Well, I mean, I would put us at
or
always,
leading, right? Or whatever, right?
Leading the charge. I mean, but as a Latino, it goes like I understand. It goes pretty
but
deep.
There's also like Putin, right? I mean, it gets more extreme than us, right? I mean, it really does.
I don't know.
Okay, whatever. Let's not even go there. But what I'm trying
I don't live in Russia.
No. But what I'm trying to say is that sense of historical imperative is done. I mean, towards a goodness, towards a sort of nirvana, sort of towards a utopia. Nobody buys into that anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way in which academia and postmodern theoreticians have sort of thought about that is, well, if it's not that, then it's the opposite of that, right? It's this sort of hopeless moral malaise in which there is no truth. And I just don't buy that, right? There is this sort of thing out there that's this fuzzy thing
So have you heard of metamodernism?
No.
It's essentially that.
Cool.
It's what people are saying comes, or there's 5 different versions of it that have different nuances. Metamodern is the catchiest of them all. So
Well, meta is such a popular word these days, right?
it's pretty appropriate for the times. But yeah, no.
But it's got to be a fucked up word if Facebook is like in a company named Meta, right? I'm sorry.
No. Yeah. Well, I think that goes that kind of talks to how, like, I'm not completely discrediting like postmodernism as an entire like there is something to that. There is a powerful, useful thing within that. If there wasn't,
But it's also sophistry, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Right?
What's sophistry?
Sophistry is like fake talk. Like
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like just talking babble, but making people think it's real.
Yeah. I'm separating that from the actual idea of like going more to the basic core of like what the main general tenets are, which one of them being moral relativism. There is such a thing as moral relativism,
Sure.
right? So I think to have that acknowledged within a title, postmodernism, I don't have a rejection of that. What I do think is a problem is that, there is not much being done to make the world better in these institutions.
Well, also, I think...
like in these academic institutions. Not that there ever was.
Can we stop?
Yeah. Is there...
It's not... I don't mind talking more, but I'd like...
Call it a night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like literally continue the conversation, but off microphone.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You want to wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, because I can't imagine the job you're going to have to put this thing together. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to start wrapping it up, but it gets hard to find a moment to stop it. We should just get a beer sometime. You want to do that now? Or you got to go?
Because I can't drink, but I can
sit
here.
You don't, because you're driving.
No, I'm on a diet. I'm trying to lose weight.
Oh, okay.
So I don't drink.
Yeah, we can hang out. No, I mean, I was also going to suggest my wrap up was going to be like, we're definitely going to have you back because you have an interesting perspective on the art world, and you have a wisdom that I think one of the reasons that I'm interested in the broader topic of the art industry is that until I started doing this, I had no reason to fucking learn that, right? Like, because it just seems so foreign and distant. So I want to be a resource for people with this information,
I hear you.
like because where the fuck else are you going to find it, and like that I think of that. I'm trying to more and more think of in terms of like, what value can I give people? So I'm super interested in this discussion, and I'm definitely going to deconstruct it, but your perspective on it is really interesting because I think it validates, and I pretty much everybody I've talked to about it is like, there's being an artist, even separate from the community, right? There is being an artist. And then there is the art community, and then there is that. But like, one of the basic premises of the show is like, working class artists. Like most people that have day jobs still need to make time to do this, and why? Like, and I think that is itself separate. There's like something about that expression, which, its validity aside, in terms of quality and proficiency, is an interesting thing.
I think art needs audience.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like this person who like makes paintings and then immediately destroys them and burns them up, I don't know if you're an artist or not.
Yeah. No. But I'm just saying that like the need for that audience, the need to
creativity in art, like being a creative person and being an artist might be two completely different things. Right?
Yeah.
And so you can be compulsed to make objects that are art, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't share them, I don't know if they really are art. It's sort of like that, tree in the forest, woods, sound, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
No. I would definitely not make an argument. I mean, I
don't know the answer. I mean, it's something I think about a lot. Like, is art something that exists independent of audience, or is art something that needs audience to exist?
It's like a movie. Is it still a movie if no one's ever watched it? I guess would be the same
as
thing.
As long as it's still in the universe, I guess, right?
If the object is made, I guess there's always potential for the audience.
Right, exactly.
So, but in the instance you said, it might be more of a spiritual ritual practice.
Or a fetish or whatever, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yep.
How can I promote you? You got anything? Oh, wait, hold on. We got
I never show anywhere. Nobody cares about me. The only way you can promote me is like, hey, you guys, if you have, if you're curating anything, if you want me, I'm game. Like whatever. like I'm just dying to put my pictures on the wall. Please, like let me do it.
And where can people find you on Instagram? Do you have a
I'm
website?
on Instagram, and I actually do part of a gallery called Singular Art, which is a Dutch online gallery. I do show regularly at Last Projects, and I do, participate wherever I'm invited.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
And you are at Skip Snow. Is
There's
that
a skipsnow.net.
okay?
Yeah.
Cool. And we'll be back next week with another artist and with another guest and another topic that may or may not be art related. 2 months off is a long time.
Hey, listen, I really want to thank you for this discussion.
No, this was fascinating. I really enjoyed this. I was already like, man, I got to have this guy back on. Because, sometimes people have a really interesting perspective on the art world, and your resignation is charming.